The massive council chamber looked like something out of a fever dream. Thousands of alien species packed into a space that seemed to bend the laws of physics itself. Some delegates floated in containment bubbles filled with methane gas. Others stood on platforms adjusted to match their home-world gravity. A few existed as pure energy, their forms flickering like candlelight in the darkness. Ambassador Mitchell walked to the center platform, his simple black suit a stark contrast to the elaborate armor, robes, and biological displays surrounding him. He'd been Earth's voice in this cosmic circus for 3 years now, and he'd learned one important lesson: never show fear. The Valerian delegation sat in the highest tier, a deliberate show of dominance. Their empire stretched across nearly a quarter of a known galaxy. War Marshal Vaktar, their supreme military commander, lounged on his throne like a crimson dragon surveying his horde. His scales caught the light and scattered it in blood-red patterns across the chamber walls. The announcement had come without warning. The Valorians wanted the Sol System. They wanted Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, everything humanity had built over 2 centuries of desperate expansion into the black. The Council expected Mitchell to beg. They expected him to offer tribute, resources, maybe even agree to become a vassal state. That's what the last 40 species had done when faced with Valerian expansion. Mitchell cleared his throat. The translation field around him hummed. Prepare and convert his words into 8,000 different languages simultaneously. Do not enter Terran space, he said simply. This is your only warning. Silence fell like a hammer. Then Vaktar's laughter shattered it. The sound was wrong, like grinding metal mixed with a tiger's growl. Other Valerian delegates joined in, their amusement echoing through the chamber. Your species discovered faster than light travel 173 years ago, Vaktar said, his voice dripping with contempt. We have been among the stars for 12,000 years. We have conquered 847 systems. We have destroyed species with technology far beyond yours. What could you possibly do to stop us? Mitchell met the War Marshal's gaze without blinking. We're not stopping you from trying, Marshal. We're warning you of the consequences. The elder delegates began to murmur. The crystalline communion, one of the oldest species in the galaxy, started vibrating in a pattern that translated to deep concern. The Hive Collective, a species that communicated through chemical signals, released a scent that their translator described as ancient fear remembered. There are stories. When the crystalline communion delegates spoke up, their voice like wind chimes in a storm. Old stories about certain worlds marked by the precursors. The precursors. Even the name caused a stir. They'd been gone for millions of years, but their ruins dotted the galaxy. Ancient warnings, incomprehensible technology, and mysteries that drove researchers mad. Some planets had markers around them, quantum beacons that still function after eons. Earth had one. Superstition, Vaktar spat. Ghost stories to frighten children. The precursors are dust. Their warnings mean nothing. But Mitchell noticed something. Some of the older species were backing away from a Valerian delegation. Species that had survived for hundreds of thousands of years didn't do that without reason. The Third Armada departs tomorrow, Vaktar announced, standing to his full height of nearly 12 feet. 10,000 warships. The pride of the Valerian Empire. Your pathetic system will fall within a week. Your colonies will be absorbed. Your people will serve the Empire or be eliminated. Other Valerian delegates roared their approval. The sound was deafening, primal. The cry of predators who'd never known defeat. Mitchell gathered his data tablets, moving with deliberate calm. He delivered Earth's message. What happened next wasn't his responsibility. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. Everyone was watching him now, waiting for panic, for desperation, for something human. At the doorway, Mitchell stopped. He looked back at Vaktar, at the assembled council, at thousands of species who thought they understood how the universe worked. We told you, he said quietly. When this is over, remember that we told you. Then he left. The doors sealed behind him with a hiss of pressurized air. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Some species demanded intervention. Others wanted to send observers. The crystalline communion began a prayer cycle for the Valorians, which everyone understood meant they expected the Empire to die. But the Valorians were already celebrating. They'd won wars against species far more advanced than humanity. They'd crushed civilizations that had begged for mercy. They'd faced down weapons that could crack planets and emerge victorious. What could one primitive species possibly do? Vaktar returned to his flagship, the Crimson Dominion, a vessel so large it had its own ecosystem inside. He gathered his commanders, the finest military minds the Empire had produced over centuries of conquest. "We jump tomorrow at dawn," he told them. "Standard formation. The humans have no fleet capable of stopping us. We'll destroy their outer defenses, occupy their worlds, and be home within the month." His commander saluted, eager for another easy victory. Another system added to the Empire's collection. Another species to either serve or be forgotten. None of them noticed the small, almost invisible quantum fluctuation that appeared when Mitchell left Council. None of them realized that Earth had been listening to every word. None of them understood that humanity had been preparing for this exact moment, since the day they'd found the precursor warning beacon orbiting their sun. The warning that translated simply to, "Danger. Proceed with extreme caution. This species must not be provoked." The Valorians had just ignored the only warning in the galaxy written in every known language, including ones that had been dead for millions of years. War Marshal Vaktar went to sleep that night dreaming of victory. He had no idea he was about to learn why some warnings should never be ignored. Commander Kyle Harrison had been stationed at Outpost Sentinel for 6 years. The facility floated near the edge of the Kuiper Belt, officially classified as a deep space research station studying ice formations and distant objects. That was the cover story, anyway. The truth was far more interesting. The command center looked ordinary enough. Rows of monitoring stations, holographic displays showing orbital trajectories, coffee cups scattered on every available surface. But beneath the floors and inside the asteroid, the outpost was built in to lay something else entirely. Something humanity had been building for decades. Harrison was reviewing supply reports when the alarm started screaming, not the gentle chimes that announced incoming cargo ships or the occasional asteroid drift. These were the deep, bone-shaking klaxons that they'd tested hundreds of times but never actually heard in a real scenario. Lieutenant Rebecca Wall spun in her chair, her fingers dancing across her console. "Sir, we have multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. Counting, my God, I'm counting over 9,000 ships. No, wait, still coming through. 10,000 contacts confirmed." Harrison felt his stomach drop, but his voice remained steady. "Classification? Valorian Empire signatures. Every single one. It's the Third Armada." Walsh turned to look at him, her face pale. "They actually came. I thought maybe the ambassador's warning would work. I thought maybe they'd reconsider." Harrison moved to stand behind her station, watching as the tactical display filled with red markers. Each one represented a Valorian warship, and there were enough of them to blot out the stars. The fleet hung there in perfect formation, a wall of metal and firepower that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. "They always do," Harrison said quietly. "Bullies don't back down from threats. They double down. Activate Protocol Omega. Send the code phrase to Director Grant. Let him know we're proceeding exactly as planned." Walsh's hands trembled slightly as she entered the command codes. "Protocol Omega activated. Message sent to Earth Command. Sir, are we really going to do this?" "We're going to follow our orders, Lieutenant. That's what we do." Harrison pulled up a secondary screen showing the Valorian fleet composition. Dreadnoughts the size of small cities. Carrier ships that could launch thousands of fighters. Destroyers bristling with weapons designed to crack planetary shields. And we're going to teach them why some species get left alone. The Valorian fleet maintained its position for nearly an hour. Harrison imagined War Marshal Vaktar on his flagship, waiting for the panicked human response, waiting for desperate diplomatic channels to open, begging for mercy, waiting for Earth to understand its place in the cosmic order. But humanity sent nothing. No transmissions, no surrender offers, no military response. Just silence and the quiet hum of monitoring stations tracking every movement the Valorians made. On the Crimson Dominion, Vaktar paced his command deck like a caged predator. His tactical displays showed the pathetic human outpost ahead. One small station. No fleet. No reinforcements. Nothing but empty space and the distant blue dot of Earth. Why aren't they responding? He demanded. Where are their ships? Their defenses? His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Krell, studied the sensors. Scans show minimal military presence. Marshal. The station ahead appears to be civilian. Mining operations. Perhaps research. No significant weapons detected. They mock us with silence. Vaktar growled. Fire on that station. One shot. Show them what happens when species defy the Empire. The forward batteries of the Crimson Dominion, charged with a sound like thunder, energy coalesced into a lance of superheated particles, bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. The beam crossed the distance to Outpost Sentinel in seconds. Harrison watched it come on his displays. Brace for impact. Shields to maximum. The particle beam hit, like the hammer of an angry god. The entire outpost shuddered. Coffee cups fell to the floor. Loose equipment rattled, but the shields held. They didn't just hold. They dispersed the energy so efficiently that the outpost's hull temperature barely increased. Walsh stared at her readings. Shields at 97%. Minimal power drain. Sir, they just hit us with enough energy to vaporize a small moon, and we barely felt it. Harrison allowed himself a small smile. Send them our regards. On the Valerian flagship, confusion rippled through the command deck. Report. Vaktar roared. Did we destroy them? Negative, Marshal. The station's shields absorbed the entire strike. Sir, their defensive capabilities are completely unexpected. Our intelligence suggested primitive technology, but those shields are far beyond anything we anticipated. Before Vaktar could respond, every screen on every ship in the Valerian fleet suddenly lit up with information. Not their own displays. Something else entirely. Something had overridden their systems. Complete technical specifications for every Valerian warship scrolled across the screens. Not just general designs, but exact details. Power coupling locations. Shield generator frequencies. Weapon charge times. Structural weak points in every hull. Computer core access codes. Then came the personnel files. Names appeared. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. Every officer, every crew member, every soldier in the entire Third Armada. Their service records, their family information, medical histories, psychological profiles, personal communications they'd sent to loved ones. Vaktar watched in growing horror as his own file appeared, his hatching date, his training records, the classified missions he'd commanded. Messages to his mate back on the homeworld. Even his genetic sequence was displayed in perfect detail. But it didn't stop there. Real-time locations of every Valerian fleet across the entire Empire appeared on the tactical displays. First Fleet, near the Gamma Quadrant. Second Fleet, patrolling the core worlds. 4 through 12 fleets, all their positions marked with impossible precision. Ships thought to be running silent, hidden in deep space. All exposed. Then came the communications. 10 years of encrypted military transmissions. Battle plans. Strategic discussions. Classified research. Political maneuvering. All of it decrypted, organized, and displayed like a history lesson. A simple message appeared over everything. We know everything about you. You know nothing about us. Final warning. Leave now. The Valerian command deck fell into shock silence. Someone had been inside their systems for years. Someone had cracked encryption that was supposed to be mathematically unbreakable. Someone had been watching, listening, recording every single thing they'd done. Back on Earth, Director James Grant stood in the operations center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Colorado mountains. Hundreds of analysts worked at stations around him, coordinating humanity's response. Giant holographic displays showed the Valerian fleet, now in visible disarray. Their fragmenting formation, one analyst reported. Several ships attempting emergency jumps back to friendly territory, others moving into defensive positions. Grant watched the chaos with grim satisfaction. Think they'll take the hint? Colonel Lisa Bennett stood beside him, arms crossed. Not yet. Pride comes before the fall, and the Valorians have oceans of pride. They're scared now, but they'll convince themselves it's a trick. A bluff. They'll push forward. She was right. On his flagship, War Marshal Vaktar forced down his fear and let anger take its place. It's a deception, he roared. Psychological warfare. They hacked our system somehow, but they can't possibly have forces to back up these threats. All ships, forward. We will show them the price of threatening the Valerian Empire. The order rippled through the fleet. Ship by ship, the formation reestablished itself. 10,000 warships began their advance toward Earth, weapons charging, shields at maximum. Harrison watched them come. Well, we tried. Execute Phase 2. Let's show them what humanity does to unwelcome guests. Walsh entered the command codes with steady hands this time. Phase 2 activated. May God have mercy on them, because we won't. Lieutenant Walsh's fingers flew across her console as the warning indicators shifted from yellow to red. They're crossing the threshold. Commander, the Valerian fleet just passed the inner Kuiper Belt marker. Harrison nodded slowly, watching the tactical display. 10,000 red dots moving in perfect military formation, accelerating toward the inner solar system, toward Earth. Execute defensive swarm deployment. Send the activation codes to all mining operations. It's time. 50 million kilometers away, Captain Derek Mason sat in the cockpit of his mining ship, the Frontier Digger. He'd spent 15 years working the asteroid belt, extracting iron, platinum, and rare earth elements from the tumbling rocks that humanity had turned into an industrial gold mine. His crews had built refineries, processing stations, and automated factories that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. They carved cities out of asteroids, created living spaces where families raised children among the stars. Now all of it had a different purpose. The activation code appeared on his screen. Mason took a deep breath and entered his command authorization. All mining vessels, this is Mason. Execute Protocol 7. I repeat, execute Protocol 7. Let's show these bastards what human ingenuity really means. Across the asteroid belt, thousands of mining ships received the same code. Automated systems that had been digging and refining for decades suddenly shifted their programming. The mining drones, construction bots, or processors, and fabrication units all received new instructions. Build, replicate, defend. The Valorians detected them almost immediately. Millions of small objects began emerging from the asteroid field, each one roughly the size of a human fist. They moved with purpose, swarming like metallic insects toward the approaching fleet. On the Crimson Dominion, Vaktar's tactical officer, Krell, studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. Marshal, we're detecting massive launches from the asteroid belt, counting 2 million objects. No, 3 million. They're still coming. Composition? Vaktar demanded. Autonomous drones. Simple construction. Primitive by our standards. Basic AI. Minimal weapons capability. Sir, these appear to be civilian equipment. Mining drones and construction bots. Vaktar barked a laugh. They're throwing their mining equipment at us? Pathetic. Point defense systems. Engage. Destroy them all. The Valerian fleet opened fire. Hundreds of thousands of point defense weapons lit up space with streams of superheated plasma and kinetic rounds. The drones began exploding by the thousands. Brilliant flashes of light marked each tiny death as the swarm approached. But something was wrong. Sir, Krell's voice carried a note of concern. For every drone we destroy, 10 more are appearing. They're replicating, using material from the asteroids to build copies of themselves. Mason watched from his ship as the swarm grew exponentially. Each drone carried a basic fabricator, a simple AI, and instructions that had been refined over years of planning. When a drone was destroyed, nearby units would harvest the debris, combine it with asteroid material, and produce replacement units within minutes. The math was beautiful in its simplicity. The Valorians could destroy thousands per second, but humanity could build tens of thousands in the same time. And every asteroid in the belt was raw material waiting to be used. Within 3 hours, millions had become billions. The swarm didn't rush forward in a suicidal charge. Instead, it spread out, forming clouds of metallic observers around the Valerian fleet. They watched, they recorded, they learned. The drones transmitted everything back to Earth in real time. Every tactical formation, every weapon system, every shield frequency, every communication between Valerian ships. Humanity's computers analyzed it all, finding patterns, discovering weaknesses, adapting strategies on the fly. Then the swarm began its real work. Some drones moved close to Valerian hulls, attaching themselves like mechanical barnacles. They didn't explode. Instead, they began molecular disassembly, using the same technology that had been mining asteroids for decades. Microscopic tools started taking apart hull plating atom by atom, slowly but inevitably working their way inside. Other drones hacked into Valerian systems, not through brute force, but by physically connecting to external sensors and ports, injecting carefully crafted code that exploited the vulnerabilities humanity had discovered during their intelligence gathering. Ship computers began receiving false information. Weapons targeting systems went offline. Life support fluctuated. A third group of drones simply projected false sensor readings. They made one Valerian ship appear to be another ship on friendly fire radars. The confusion was immediate and catastrophic. Weapons hold. Krell screamed as the Crimson Dominion's guns tracked what appeared to be an enemy vessel. That's the Bloody Talon. Friendly ship. But the false readings persisted. Across the fleet, ships began firing on each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe through the electronic fog the drones created. These aren't military drones. Krell shouted, his claws digging into his console in frustration. These are mining equipment. Construction bots. How are they doing this? Back on Earth, Admiral Laura Phillips stood in the Orbital Defense Station, watching the chaos unfold. She'd been a military strategist for 30 years, and this moment was the culmination of decades of planning. A younger officer stood beside her, watching in awe as the Valerian formation fell apart. Admiral, they're completely disorganized. Half their fleet is disabled. Another quarter is scattered trying to avoid the swarm. Phillips nodded, allowing herself a thin smile. That's the beauty of it, Lieutenant. We never needed a war fleet. We never needed massive battleships or superweapons. Our entire industrial infrastructure is the weapon. Every mining drone, every construction bot, every piece of equipment we've built to survive out here can be turned into a defensive system. War Marshal Vakhtar's flagship shuddered violently as 1,000 drones latched onto the hull. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Hull breach warnings. System failures. Computer intrusions. His perfect military machine was being taken apart by what amounted to glorified construction equipment. Marshal, we've lost contact with 3,000 ships. Another 2,000 report critical system failures. The swarm is everywhere. We can't fight them all. A new message appeared on every functioning screen in the Valerian fleet. Simple, direct, final, last chance. Leave now, or learn why the precursors warned others about us. Vakhtar stared at the message, his pride warring with his survival instinct. He'd conquered hundreds of worlds. He'd crushed species far older and more advanced than these humans. The Valerian Empire had never retreated, never surrendered, never shown weakness. But his fleet was dying around him, not from superior firepower, but from being systematically dismantled by an enemy that didn't even need warships to fight. His pride won. All remaining ships, full speed to Earth. Vakhtar roared, "We end this now. Abandon disabled vessels. All functional ships, maximum thrust. We will reach their homeworld and show them the true meaning of Valerian fury." 5,000 warships broke away from the swarm, leaving behind their disabled comrades. They accelerated toward Earth at maximum speed, weapons charging, crews desperate for revenge against an enemy that had humiliated them with mining equipment. Mason watched them go, his expression grim. They're not going to stop, are they? No. Harrison replied over the communication channel. They're going to learn the hard way. Earth Command, this is Outpost Sentinel. The Valorians are coming through. Activate Phase 3. The response came immediately. Phase 3 confirmed. May God help them all. Captain Mason's voice crackled across the communication channel, exhaustion evident in every word. Earth Command, they're coming through. I count 5,000 ships. They left everything else behind. These are the fastest, most heavily armed vessels in their fleet. Admiral Laura Phillips stood in the orbital defense station, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The red markers representing Valerian warships accelerated toward Earth like bullets. They'd be in firing range of the planet within hours. She looked remarkably calm for someone watching an invasion fleet approach humanity's homeworld. Right on schedule, she said quietly. Activate Damocles. Authorization code Phillips 77 Delta. Damocles activation confirmed. The communications officer replied, powering up now. Behind Earth, hidden in the planet's shadow where no sensor could detect it, something ancient and terrible began to wake up. For 40 years, humanity had been building in secret. They'd used construction ships disguised as deep space research vessels. They'd transported materials and cargo, containers labeled as mining equipment. They'd worked in shifts that spanned decades, each generation of engineers training the next, all sworn to absolute secrecy. The Damocles array was the size of a small moon, not a station, not a ship, a weapon, the single largest thing humanity had ever constructed, and had been invisible to the galaxy for 4 decades. War Marshal Vaktar stood on the bridge of the Crimson Dominion, watching Earth grow larger on his view screens. The blue and white planet looked peaceful, almost innocent. He'd lost over half his fleet, but 5,000 warships was still more than enough to reduce that world to ash. The humans had surprised him with their tricks and their mining drones, but this ended now. All ships, prepare to fire on my command, he ordered. Target major population centers first. I want them to understand the price of defiance. His tactical officer, Krell, suddenly went rigid at his station. Marshal, I'm detecting something. Massive energy signature directly ahead. How do we miss this? It's enormous. What are you talking about? Vaktar demanded. There's nothing between us and Earth except empty space. Sir, it was invisible until now. Gravitational lensing, quantum stealth. Something is bending space itself. The signature is coming from Earth's shadow, and it's bigger than anything I've ever seen. On every Valerian ship, alarms began screaming. Sensors had shown empty space moments before suddenly revealed something impossible. A structure of metal and energy that dwarfed even their largest dreadnoughts appeared from nowhere, positioned perfectly between the fleet and Earth. Space itself began to ripple like disturbed water. The effect spread outward from the Damocles array in waves, moving faster than light, touching every Valerian vessel simultaneously. Then everything went dark. On the Crimson Dominion, every system died at once. Weapons powered down mid-charge. Shields collapsed. The engines fell silent. Emergency lights flickered and went out. The artificial gravity failed, leaving Vaktar floating in darkness. Report, he roared into the blackness. No response. The communication systems were dead too, around him. He could hear his crew panicking in the darkness, their voices echoing off the metal walls. The same scene repeated across 5,000 ships. Weapons offline. Shields offline. Engines dead. And most terrifying of all, life support beginning to fail. Temperatures started dropping as heating systems shut down. Air recyclers went silent. Backup power systems that should have activated automatically remained dormant. The Valerian fleet, the pride of an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds, floated dead in space like ancient derelicts. Colonel Tom Rodriguez gathered his boarding teams in the hangar bay of the human carrier Perseverance. 200 teams, each consisting of engineers, medical personnel, and security forces. They'd been training for this moment for years. Listen up. Rodriguez addressed his people. Remember, we're here to help them, not hurt them. These crews are going to be terrified. Their ships just died around them, and they're floating in the dark. First priority is life support. Get their air and heat running. Second priority is emergency lighting. Third is communications, so they can talk to each other. We save lives first, ask questions later. Is that clear? A chorus of acknowledgments echoed through the bay. Rodriguez nodded. Good. Deploy. Human boarding craft launched by the hundreds, each one heading toward a disabled Valerian ship. They use magnetic clamps and cutting torches to create entry points, moving quickly but carefully. Inside the dark ships, they found chaos. Valerian crew members huddled in the darkness, some injured from the sudden loss of gravity, all confused and afraid. The humans worked with practiced efficiency. Within minutes of boarding, they had emergency power flowing to life support systems. Air began circulating again. Heat returned. Lights flickered back to life, revealing human faces behind helmets, offering help instead of death. On the Crimson Dominion, Rodriguez personally led the team that reached the command deck. They found Vaktar floating near his throne, his crimson scales dull in the emergency lighting, his eyes filled with confusion and rage. "Don't move," one of Rodriguez's security personnel warned, though their weapons remained lowered. "We're restoring your life support now." Within an hour, basic systems were running on every Valerian ship. The crews were safe, warm, and breathing, but nothing else worked. Weapons remained offline. Engines stayed silent. The ships were functional prisons floating in space. General Robert Matthews appeared on every view screen throughout the Valerian fleet. He was an older man, his hair gray, his face lined with years of responsibility. He wore a simple military uniform with no excessive decorations. When he spoke, his voice was firm but not cruel. "War Marshal Vaktar, I am General Matthews, Commander of Earth Defense Forces. Your fleet has been disabled, but your crews are safe. We've restored life support and basic systems. No one needs to die today." Vaktar found a working communication panel and snarled into it. "What have you done? What weapon is this?" Matthews paused, seeming to consider how much to reveal. "Humanity has achieved something your species hasn't encountered yet. We call it quantum entanglement mastery. For the past 60 years, we've been seeding materials into the Galactic Trade Network. Special alloys, computer components, power couplings. Materials that every spacefaring species uses in their construction because they're efficient and cheap." He let that information settle before continuing. "These materials have a unique property. They're quantum entangled with control systems here in the Sol system. We can manipulate them at the quantum level. We can disable any technology built with these materials, anywhere in the galaxy whenever we choose." Vaktar felt his blood run cold. "You're saying our ships are built with your materials? Your ships, your weapons, your computers, your life support. The Valerian Empire has been buying from trading houses that we've quietly controlled for decades. You're not alone. Most major civilizations in this galaxy have been using our materials." It made economic sense. They were reliable, affordable, and available everywhere. "This is impossible," Vaktar whispered. "We would have detected this. Quantum entanglement operates below the level your sensors can detect. It's not a signal to intercept or a code to crack. It's fundamental physics that your species hasn't mastered yet." Matthews leaned forward slightly. "Your fleet isn't defeated, Marshal. It's been temporarily shut down to prove a point. We can turn everything back on just as easily as we turned it off." Vaktar gripped his throne, his mind racing. "Why? If you have this power, why didn't you conquer the galaxy first? Why wait for us to attack you?" Matthews was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that transcended the words themselves. "Because, War Marshal, that's exactly the question we need to answer. And before we release your fleet, before we let you return to your empire, you're going to understand why humanity chose a different path. You're going to learn what we learned, and you're going to help us make sure the galaxy doesn't repeat the mistakes of those who came before us." Director James Grant waited in the observation deck of the USS Constitution, humanity's diplomatic vessel that orbited just beyond Earth's moon. The room was simple, almost austere. A large window dominated one wall, offering an unobstructed view of Earth hanging in the darkness of space. A conference table sat in the center, surrounded by comfortable chairs. No weapons, no guards visible, just a place for conversation. War Marshal Vaktar entered the room escorted by 2 human officers who immediately withdrew, leaving him alone with Grant. The Valerian commander moved slowly, his movements lacking the aggressive confidence he displayed at the Galactic Council. His crimson scale seemed duller somehow, as if the past few days had aged him decades. Grant gestured to a chair sized appropriately for Vaktar's larger frame. "Please sit. Would you like anything? Water? We have a beverage synthesizer that can approximate most species' nutritional requirements." Vaktar sat heavily, his eyes fixed on Grant. "I don't understand you. Your species had this capability for decades. You could have ruled the galaxy. Every species would have bowed before you. Why did you take what you could have easily claimed?" Grant walked to the observation window, his hands clasped behind his back. Earth rotated slowly below them, clouds swirling across blue oceans, lights beginning to appear on the night side where cities sprawled. "Because we learned from our mistakes, Marshall, and we made a lot of them." He turned to face Vaktar directly. "Humanity nearly destroyed itself 17 times before we reached the stars. 17 separate occasions where we stood on the brink of extinction. Nuclear wars that came within minutes of launching. Biological weapons that escaped containment. Environmental collapse that killed billions. Genocides committed in the name of ideology, religion, and resources. We learned, painfully and at terrible cost, that power without wisdom leads inevitably to extinction." Vaktar leaned forward. "But you survived. You overcame those challenges. That should have made you stronger, more worthy of conquest." "It made us cautious," Grant corrected. He activated a holographic display in the center of the table. Images appeared, showing ancient structures drifting in deep space. "When we finally developed faster-than-light travel and began exploring beyond our solar system, we found something. The precursor sites. Massive stations, some the size of planets. All abandoned, all perfectly preserved by the vacuum of space." The hologram shifted, showing the interior of one such station. Technology that seemed to blend organic and mechanical elements. Corridors that twisted through impossible geometries. And everywhere, warnings written in languages that predated human civilization by millions of years. "We found them in multiple star systems," Grant continued. "Ancient stations left by a species that achieved technological singularity roughly 3 million years ago. They'd mastered physics in ways we're still trying to understand. They could manipulate space-time, create energy from nothing, and had achieved what we would call godhood." "What happened to them?" Vaktar asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Colonel Lisa Bennett entered the observation deck, carrying a data tablet. She was a scholar as much as a soldier, one of the lead researchers who'd spent 20 years studying the precursor sites. "They destroyed themselves, Marshall. We found their historical archives, their databases, their final messages. They became so powerful that philosophical differences turned into extinction-level conflicts. One faction believed in force unity, bringing all species under their control for their own protection. Another believed in isolation, letting younger species develop without interference. A third wanted to reshape reality itself according to their ideals." She activated another section of the hologram. The war lasted less than a century, but it was so devastating that it tore apart the fabric of space-time in multiple regions. Entire star systems were erased from existence. The survivors realized what they'd done and left warnings around certain worlds. Worlds where they detected species with similar potential. Earth was one of them. Vaktar said quietly. "Yes," Grant confirmed. "They marked us as a species with potential for either transcendence or universal threat. They left detailed archives explaining what they'd learned, what mistakes they'd made, and what warnings they want to pass on to whoever came after them. We spent 50 years translating and studying those archives before we made any decisions about humanity's future in the galaxy." Captain Andrew Hayes joined them, pulling up additional files on the holographic display. He'd been part of the team that developed humanity's quantum entanglement technology, turning theoretical physics into practical application. "We chose patience, Marshall. We built defensive capabilities. Yes. But more importantly, we built a safety net for the entire galaxy. Those materials we seeded into the trade networks, they weren't weapons. They were safeguards. We've been monitoring galactic civilization for 60 years. Hayes explained, watching for patterns, watching for species that might follow the precursor's path. The Valerian Empire wasn't the first aggressive expansionist force we've encountered. You're just the first that pushed far enough to threaten Earth directly. Admiral Phillips entered last, her presence commanding immediate attention despite her small stature compared to Vaktar. We're not guarding the galaxy, Marshal. We're preparing it. The Precursor's archive showed us dozens of possible futures. Computer simulations running millions of scenarios. In most of them, aggressive expansion by any single species leads to galactic war. War leads to the development of increasingly destructive weapons. Those weapons eventually destroy not just civilizations, but the galaxy itself. She pulled up a simulation. Stars went dark one by one as warfare spread. Species that had existed for millions of years vanished in moments. We chose a different path. Not conquest, not isolation, but preparation and subtle guidance. Vaktar stood and walked to the observation window, looking down at Earth. His reflection in the glass showed an aged warrior confronting uncomfortable truths. You're offering us a choice. I understand that much. But what does this choice actually mean? Grant joined him at the window. It means you can return to your empire and continue your expansion. We won't stop you immediately, but you'll know that humanity is watching. Every ship you build will have our safeguards in it. Every weapon system will have a kill switch we control. You'll live knowing that at any moment, we could shut down your entire civilization if you cross a line we've drawn. Or, Vaktar prompted, or you join the network, Bennett said. You help us prevent the mistakes the Precursors made. You contribute to actual galactic stability instead of forced unity through conquest. You maintain your independence, your culture, your empire, but you agree to certain limitations. No wars of extermination. No forced assimilation of other species. No development of weapons designed to destroy entire planets or star systems. Other species are being offered the same choice right now. Hayes added, Ambassador Mitchell has been briefing the Galactic Council for hours. Every major civilization is learning what you're learning. Some will join immediately. Others will resist. But they'll all understand that the rules have changed. Vaktar turned from the window. And if we refuse, if the Valerian Empire decides to reject both options and continue as we have, Colonel Rodriguez, who'd been standing quietly near the door, finally spoke. Then you'll find that every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology you built suddenly has a kill switch we control. We won't invade your worlds, Marshal. We won't drop bombs on your cities or kill your people. We'll just make sure you can't threaten anyone else. Your ships will be grounded. Your weapons will be inert. Your entire military infrastructure will be nothing more than expensive monuments to pride. The room fell silent. Vaktar understood completely now. Humanity hadn't built an empire. They'd built something far more sophisticated. A cage that encompassed the entire known galaxy, with safeguards built into every piece of modern technology. And they held every key. I'll need to speak with my emperor. Vaktar said finally, This decision affects our entire civilization. Take all the time you need, Grant replied. Your fleet will be fully operational and free to leave within 24 hours. All systems restored. All crews healthy and supplied for the journey home. Consider this a demonstration of good faith. We disabled your fleet to make a point, not to destroy it. As Vaktar moved toward the door, he paused. Why show me all this? Why explain your capabilities so thoroughly? Grant smiled slightly. Because secrets create fear, and fear creates conflict. We want you to understand exactly what humanity has built and why we build it. We want you to make an informed choice, not one based on ignorance or pride. After Vaktar departed with his escort, Admiral Phillips stood beside Grant at the observation window. Do you think they'll join? Some will, Grant replied. The Valorians might. Their emperor is aggressive but not stupid. Others won't. They'll try to find ways around our safeguards, develop technology we haven't seeded, maintain their independence at any cost. And then they'll discover that we've been 3 steps ahead for 60 years. Grant looked out at Earth, at the blue and white world that had nearly destroyed itself so many times. The Precursors left us a warning carved into quantum space itself. We're turning it into a promise. The galaxy won't fall the way they did. Not on our watch. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Humanity had revealed its hand, and the revelation changed everything. Species that had been preparing invasion fleets suddenly found themselves in emergency council meetings. Aggressive empires reconsidered their expansion plans. Trade networks buzzed with speculation and fear. But humanity made no moves to conquer. They simply watched, waited, and maintained their network of safeguards. They'd won the most important victory possible without firing a shot that destroyed rather than disabled. They'd won before the game even started. And now, they were offering others a chance to join them in building something better than empire. Something that might actually last.